Good morning, humans. It's supposed to rain here in LA. Isn't that amazing? So I thought I'd better get my video done early before it starts raining. Ziggy came outside too, but he's running around over there somewhere. Hey, Ziggy! Where are you? Ziggy. There he is. A lot of people come to me with the idea that they want to get into Zen because they're looking for peace. And that's nice. People looking for peace is good, peace is good. One of the things, though, that people don't seem to be able to come to grips with, and this is something I've had to come to grips with myself, so I'm not pointing fingers at everybody else, is that peace is boring. And that's a big problem for people who are studying this practice on a whole lot of levels, and I'm going to see if I can put them all together for you here. If you want to seek peace, what you are seeking is also called by some people boredom. Zazen is boring. I've said this from my first book on, and I just went and looked it up on the internet, and I apparently am known for the guy who says Zen is boring. But it really is. Zen practice is frightfully boring, to be British about it. You're sitting there basically watching paint dry. People say that, when they describe their boring experiences, I'm just sitting there watching paint dry. That's what you're doing. You're just sitting there in front of a wall looking at the paint, which has been dry for 20 or 30 years, continue to dry. That's all you're doing, and you're trying not to do anything else. But what we tend to do on a kind of personal level is we want to alleviate our boredom by poking our brains. This is the best metaphor I can come up with, and if somebody else can come up with a better one, that's great. But what it appeared to me to be as I watched it happen was that once my brain settled into a more peaceful situation where it wasn't, generating all kinds of thoughts, what I would go in and do, metaphorically, is like poke it. Try to get another thought to come out. And I realized after a while that this was a habit that I had, and a very strongly ingrained habit. And most habits happen unconsciously. So it's good that I got to the point where I was aware that I was doing this, but it happens without your awareness, and it's still, even to me after 35 or some years of doing this practice, it still happens to me without my awareness. What will happen is that you first have a kind of a superficial level of stuff that's going on in your head that you kind of recognize, and it's the same thing you've been churning out your entire life, the various thoughts about whatever amuses you or frightens you or sickens you or whatever it is that just come up in your mind. And you can kind of, if you work at it for a while, usually most people can kind of get to the point where that's not happening so much anymore. The next layer is stuff you've repressed and forgotten. And that stuff kind of comes up. It's sort of like, what it feels like is that the brain is kind of rummaging around. It's like you imagine you're going into an attic, which you haven't been into for a while, and you've forgotten what you put up in the attic. And you're rummaging around to find something interesting. And that seems to be what the brain is doing. And it finds this interesting thing, this forgotten memory, childhood trauma. It could be something positive, it could be something negative. In my own case, maybe because of the kind of personality I am, it's usually something negative, but it could be something positive that your brain just goes, whoa, look at that, and then just starts going in and on that one for a while because it's something that's been forgotten. That's really hard to deal with, and that's the product mostly of trying not to be bored, because otherwise what are you doing when you're sitting there? You're trying to look at emptiness, you're trying to look at nothingness, you're trying to look at silence, which is difficult to do, for one thing, but one of the reasons it's difficult to do is because you have such a habit of not looking at silence, of looking for anything but silence, of looking for something to replace the silence that's going on, or something to replace the boredom, or something to give you, some kind of excitement. perhaps one of the reasons we exist at all is because the universe got bored. This is one of my little pet theories. It's not really a theory, it's just sort of my own interpretation of other things I've seen explained by people in much more fancy language. But I feel like that idea of ignorance, avidya, that comes up in old Buddhist literature as being the bottom strata of where we exist, could, and it doesn't sound like it connects together very well now that I'm saying it, but it could also be expressed as boredom. It could be expressed as, the boredom that is peace. But what we're looking for is boredom. And one of the things I see, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll do it anyway. One of the things I see in the world of sort of a big Buddhism in the United States and Europe and other places in the West, probably it happens in Japan and in the East too, is that there's a kind of collective rejection of the boredom of it. And I think this is one of the reasons that I find so much of what's going on in American Buddhism, especially like online or when I go to a center and see what they're doing over there, why I find it so depressing. Because I see people who are looking for ways to make Zen exciting. Because otherwise, how are you going to sell it to people? You can't really sell them on the most dull practice that there is in the world. So you've got to jazz it up somehow. And so you get into some kind of political cause, or you get into some sort of social movement, and those always look good because they're good. You're doing good for the world. Those are great distractions from boredom. There's other sorts of distractions from boredom that aren't so savory, but usually those versions get called out. If somebody gets into, I don't know, sex and money and stuff like that, then everybody calls them out. But if they get into good causes, nobody says, oh yeah, you're not really doing it. But if you look at the history of Buddhism isn't about going out and doing good causes for the world. I mean, it's not a bad thing for individual Buddhists to go get involved in that stuff. I'm not saying that, so don't get me wrong there. But Buddhism, as far as what a center is for, what a temple is for, that's not what they're about. They've never been about that except in recent times. And, argue with me if you want, but that's the way it goes. That's the thing. Now, there's one quote that I was going to use in this video, and I tried to find the source of the quote, and the only source of the quote I could find was me when I looked on the internet and looked on Google. But I swear to God that when I was studying Buddhism very early on in my practice, one quote I heard from a Buddhist master, and I don't even want to say who I thought it was, because apparently it's not him, but some Buddhist master, so I don't know who it was. I heard to say, if people knew how dry, dull, and tasteless the Buddha world was, they would never want to go there. And I remember reading that in a book, and I don't think it was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Apparently it wasn't Buddha as the center of gravity, because I just went and looked in that. I just remember reading it in a book. And I was like 19 or 20 years old or whatever. I was just starting out in this practice, and I was a young punk rock bassist and all that other stuff that you've heard about in my books and things. Ziggy is going wild up there. I don't know what he's... What are you looking for, Ziggy? Hey, Ziggy. Ziggy, what are you looking for? Anyway, that's how Ziggy deals with boredom. But when I heard that phrase, or read that phrase, if people knew how dry, dull, and tasteless the Buddha world was, they would never want to go there, it kind of scared me. It was kind of like, is this what I'm getting into? Is what I'm getting into something that is dry, dull, and tasteless? And yeah, it kind of is. Dry, dull, and tasteless is what Buddhism is all about. That nothingness, that mu, when people are getting excited about doing the koan mu, it's what is the, let's see, does a dog have Buddha nature? That's a good one for Ziggy. And the answer is mu. And mu is a word that means nothing, like absolute nothingness. It also, if you want a clue as to how to deal with this koan, I'll give it to you right here. The original pronunciation of mu in Chinese, mu is how it's pronounced in Japanese. As I've said before on this, the Japanese and Chinese use the same characters but pronounce them in different ways. The way the Chinese pronounce that character is wu. So, does a dog have Buddha nature? Woo! That's the answer. It's a little pun, but nobody gets it because it's been transformed into moo, and then people don't know. But that moo is nothing. Is nothing. So what we're really looking into is nothing. Now, the only caveat I can say that might make you feel a little bit better about that nothing is that nothing is the very womb from which everything springs. So it's not nothing in the sense of being absent of anything. It's nothing in the sense of being so vast and so undefiled by differentiation and discrimination that to the thinking mind it can't be perceived as anything but nothing. It's unperceivable by your mind, and what we're looking for is that aspect of ourselves that is unperceivable, and that makes it sound nice. But that aspect of ourselves that is unperceivable could also be defined as that aspect of ourselves which is totally boring. Totally boring. Like 100% boring. That is what we're looking for when we're looking for peace. So if you're looking for peace, you're looking for boredom. And I support you in this. It took me a long time to get to it, but I realized that boring is good. And that's what I really want. What I really want in life is the most boring life possible. I reject it, I get upset about it, I can, gripe about it and complain about being bored. Oh, I'm so bored. But that's really what I'm looking for. What I really, really want most of all out of life is total boredom. So there you go. If you want to help me be bored, you can send me a donation at the link that you're seeing at the screen there. That is how I make my living. That is my only source of income right now. That's it. That's everything. Well, like I say, I get like $100 check for book royalties every once in a while, but that's, really what I get is from you. But if you're having financial trouble, don't donate to me, because everything is okay, but the reason it's okay is because people do keep donating, so that's good. I think it's going to rain soon, so I better get myself and Ziggy back inside. See you later. Have a good time all the time. Bye.